What's up, guys? This is Naxxion back with another video, and today I'm going to be theory crafting something that I feel Eldlich can take advantage of if done correctly. This is still more of like a concept, but with the release of the Sun and Thunder Swamp from Duelist Advanced, there's been one particular thing that I've been thinking about, of course, was Eldlich and something that you can do with it. And one of the things that came to mind was diagram. Now, currently, it's not fleshed out. I'm still experimenting and building up my Duelist Advanced Eldlich list, but I wanted to just kind of put it out there and show what could this do for the deck in itself and why I think there's some synergy, if not the most perfect thing in the world. But basically, we have diagrams still at 1, and with Masterpiece at 1, this makes this kind of viable. And with Sun and Thunder Swamp, we now add additions. Now, obviously, this can go in many different ways with what you're trying to get. This, like a combo like this, for example, not hard opening Masterpiece, and this is why you would do it like this, is because you want to see access to it. Or even you don't play diagram at all and you just play Masterpiece, but I only play it because, well, you can play terraforming and then you can do set rotation and stuff. So this isn't the only way to do this, but basically, with the extra addition of a continuous spell that actually matters for this deck, especially since Swamp, I think, is very underrated, you now actually have more ways to get the requirements for Masterpiece to work, because this will stay on the field and your trap cards. But basically, we'll start with these two, and we'll just add 3 random cards on the top. Okay, so this is pretty solid. We have, this and this, but we'll start with just kind of showcasing what you can do. So first thing is you could play the Sun and Thunder Swamp, and of course you discard 1. In this case, you would most likely, depending on what kind of deck you're going for, but we're going to discard this, so then we can set a trap card that can summon itself. So right now we have Conquistador, Cursed Eldland, so we can also just get access to Eldlich if we really need to. But actually, that'll come up with the Eldland here, because this is actually very solid. And, with the addition of this, you can search, Amy if you have another name, but of course here we do have that, so it's not terrible. But for the sake of it and keeping it simple, we'll just go with an Hero of the Golden Lamb, and it'll be set down. Now, we can play Cursed Eldland if we want now, because the only thing this loses to is, well, Ogre, but that's for the second effect. So we have setup. We can now banish that for later. We play Cursed Eldland. We can pay 8. We can search. It doesn't matter what we search here. We can grab an Eldlich. Again, if we're going second, you can grab that. Or you can just grab Golden Land. So we'll just guarantee to grab this. This will be important later. Then we throw the diagram onto the board. Diagram can pop the Eldland to search for Masterpiece. And then, of course, that will be able to send Eldlich to the graveyard right there. And again, this is still very solid. If we are afraid, and again, with the setting, you could just do the one-of traps, so you don't have to hit something here. But for the sake of it, we're just going to banish that to set a... we'll just do a Conquistador here. We'll have that set. So now, with the board state, we have Masterpiece in hand. We still have cards in hand, but we have options. We have every option to now either get monster and spell or trap. But for this sake, we'll use Eldlich effect. Again, send whatever you want. Since we already have a conch, we'll just send that. Special out the Eldlich to the field. Try to keep this all nice and organized here. So Eldlich is on board. We will now attribute that to go into the nice QCR Fallen. And now, again, preference. This entirely depends on what you want, but you can either attribute the Sun and Thunder in this or that. In this case, we'll just tribute both of this, because frankly, it's all right. So we'll summon out Masterpiece, and then we use the effect of this, and we can go straight into, of course, I misplace my Mad Golden Lords. I've been moving a lot of cards around. Okay, so there's the Eldlich, the Mad Golden Lord, right there. But here's the good part, too. So we still have this set, and we can set whatever else is in hand. So obviously it's not always going to look like this, but what we do have is an end phase of turn. Banish that. The most important thing that we get is this, right here. Because with the theory of Masterpiece, and this also just being good because it'll just flow into another, Masterpiece can start just, banishing stuff. You'll have your cards activating, special summoning themselves to the field, linking those off. And then you can use this to now reset those cards and then use it so your Masterpiece stays live. But the important question here is, why would you want this? Why would you go out of your way to play something like this, which requires some setup, and it's probably not as versatile as other things? Well, for one, it will innately get rid of some of the cards in the back row that you may not want. So you can, per se, get rid of some floodgates that you don't want. It's another option for that. Secondly, it establishes a much stronger board state than what Pure Eldlich can do. The thing about Pure Eldlich is even though you don't reveal your hand all the time because you have the cards set onto the board, the thing about it is it's very easy to break it. Having a Masterpiece on the board is not only going to just be completely random, but it also is extremely hard to out. And a Trident Quick Effect Pop is always going to be a very solid effect. But the deck now also has a proper way to get rid of traps and reset them and keep looping that. Again, it's just a theory. I still need to do more testing with it, but I like it in theory. I like the idea of being able to add something like this to this, which you can naturally do anyway, and because you now play, again, more copies of Thunder and Thunder Swamp, which already just plays around so many hand traps and sets up Grave that even though you might neg there, if you even hard open that and just one of that, you can just sit on a Towers, right? And you already set another probably really strong continuous monster onto the board. And, there's some versatility in it. And, of course, Eldlich himself, because this card is insane, I'm going to say this over and over again, you can tribute it, get this, tribute that, and then it will just float. So you get two big bodies onto the board. Of course, you would get Matt the Golden Lord here, but, whatever. Depends on the circumstance. Just having that board presence and having that extra versatility is just something that you can keep in mind for Eldlich, because if there's one thing the deck struggles with right now, especially, is just the fact that cards like Dominus Impulse are in the game, which if you're and Ash and Bell, so you have many choke points for your opponent to just prevent you from ever seeing an Eldlich hit the field. And you could, of course, always just play an engine, but in my testing, it always kind of conflicts. Fiendsmith Eldlich is not bad, for example, but the thing that Fiendsmith does is just not what Eldlich is going for. Eldlich wants to play long. It wants to get you into that kind of spot, but as good as Fiendsmith is, they don't further the combo, nor do they actually help the cards themselves. The thing with Masterpiece, at least, is if you have dead cards on the board or, opening hand, it does kind of help going second, too. I mean, you can just summon a free quick effect pop, set up your graveyard, and it's not terrible. Obviously, Masterpiece is a bit power creep, and that's why I'm not entirely 100% sold just yet. If this is completely viable, I'm going to be testing this more, but I'm mulling it over because I'm thinking, banlist season coming up for August, and the last one where we got Masterpiece off. Masterpiece, I do believe, has not seen any real competitive success yet, and, trap decks, mainly Eldlich, ate really well at Duelist Advance, and considering that's probably the last good piece of generic trap support that we're going to get for a while for Eldlich, make the best of it. And certainly, we do have some options. Of course, you can always play something like Zodiac if, Dryden never gets unbanned, Rat Pier becomes relevant, and Barrage ever goes up. But, I'm just thinking, because I know True Draco Eldlich is, an option. It was something in the past that you could do, but in this day and age, you want to simplify very much how much you invest. And since Eldlich needs every single card, you don't want to give up like 8 or 9 slots just for it to get ashed and then you set 4 anyway. At least with something like this, And this is where Diagram becomes kind of the tricky part of a combo like this, because Diagram in itself can become instantly useless if you open up this. So my theory is, if Masterpiece goes to 2, you won't need to play Diagram. If Masterpiece goes to 3, you can still play 3 of this in Eldlich. And again, we have ways of recycling. This is one thing that I do not think was completely viable beforehand, was the fact that Eldlich did not have a grind. This now not only just keeps fueling this, but, with how Elixir works, and my theory is you play 2 of this. I never agreed with 1, even though there's actual valid reasons to play 1. The engine can support it, and you can constantly, in theory, keep infinitely looping it until you lose life points. But still, Masterpiece doesn't activate any of these like Ash or Impulse cards, because I'm pretty sure Impulse is on activation, so not inherent summons. And it's surprising. It has that surprise factor. It has some synergy. It also does just help get your cards in the grave so you can get into your engine pieces. So there is that going for it. And of course, you have the free link one right here, which with Eldlich himself is just yet another thing, because I made a video about how you can make a whole engine off of Eldlich just by himself with the Delta of Imitation. But again, this is just a theory. I wanted to spitball this and kind of put this out there as I love Eldlich, duh. But I wanted to just, try something a bit different, with the theory crafting. And, I can do another hand here, but of course, we're going to just open up Diagram no matter what. Just for the sake of it. Because, you can always open up with just Masterpiece himself. The thing that Eldlich needs is that speed and versatility, and also cards that play into it. Of course, if you play this variant, you will probably cut some cards out. So, fairly solid. Oh, I got Skill Drain. Beautiful card. So, we got options on how we want to do this. So, we can start immediately with Sun and Thunder Swamp. We discard, set, we'll get out, just because in the current build there's not 2 Hakira in here, get the Conch to set that onto the board. We play Diagram. Actually, hold on a second. Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I forgot. Sun and Thunder Swamp also has an additional effect that's relevant. Pop this. Is it an if? Yes, okay, so that'll be on a new chain. So now we will search for the one and only Masterpiece. And then we use the effect of this to target that to add yet another copy of the Conch. So we don't actually neg here at all. We get to plus. So now, again, we'll set that. In this case, we would have to tribute both of this. Summon out Masterpiece. We still get Skill Drain. The Ice Dragons right there. And of course, we would banish this and banish this to get 2 more sets. So, we end the board. And again, I'm going to emphasize this as much as I need to. Depends on what you're facing and all that. But this is pretty solid, all things considered. Now, the opponent has to deal with a monster that can't be affected by spells or traps. So in games 2, where they'll play a bunch of board breakers, now, well, if you even break the board, there's a tower monster that you have to out, which, again, it's not the hardest thing. But it is something that you can do. You know, in this hand, we have Skill Drain, which is just a free auto win. We have the ability to just start resetting. If this goes off, it's GG because, you know, we're going to get Eldlich and all that. I suppose I'll do one more test hand. But this time we'll just do with the Masterpiece. Just going to randomly shuffle this up so we can just get a nice old randomization. Hello, Wandering Time. Well, drew Swamp again. That's beautiful. So yeah, this also isn't terrible going second either. With the Sun and Thunder Swamp, I guess this whole video is just Sun and Thunder Swamp 2.0. You know, Wandering Titan is actually not the worst card to main deck anymore because now you have an actual way to break a board going second. Trap Tricks is cute. I might cut it though because it's just the way that the future of the decks will be designed. But in this case, going first, play the Sun and Thunder, discard this. We're just going to get the Yugioh, set that onto the board. We're going to tribute both. Summon Masterpiece onto the field. We'll set the Conch. We'll set the Trap Tricks. Banish that. And now we got access to Elixir. We have a guaranteed pop, ways to get into Engine with a very strong monster that didn't play into any hand traps. Now that said, I want to at least do one other before I end this video with, we'll go Masterpiece, and I want to guarantee hard open a Delta of Invitation with a random hand. Without that, just because I'm trying to make a point here. So now we have 3 of this and that. Let's start by playing Delta of Invitation. Invitation effect to dump Eldlich to the grave. Set the Imperm right there. Special this onto the board. We use the effect of this. So create the token. We're going to tribute the Eldlich. Go into broken card right here. Now in theory, right here, you can technically do 2 things. You can either go into the Silhouette to get another card. This will float into an Eldlich. And, I mean, it's solid. It's definitely a fairly solid option. The Imperm's not the greatest card to draw, but again, I'm just showing the raw resource aspect of this. Of course, what you can do is set that and then tribute both of this. Go into Masterpiece, and then we'll use the effect of that. You can either go into Eldlich or the Mad Golden, as you would do when you have Tikaboo here. Again, but with it, you have monsters on the board. And if you're not worried about that, and you know, for example, you have guarantee access right there, what you could do is just link this off, go into a Link Spider, then get these off. Basically, you could just go into Silhouette Rabbit. Man, that's embarrassing. You can go into Silhouette Rabbit and we'll say this is Silhouette Rabbit. We'll use Silhouette Rabbit to set a card. So, you know, you still have that Eldlich option. We're just going to go with this because, you know, it's just the best point to make in terms of being able to feed Masterpiece to be able to keep doing stuff. We'll banish the Conquistador to... because we don't actually have to bait the Ash, you know, we'll get the spell card right here. So now with this board, you have at least with this, again, this hand, it'll always be different, but you have Floodgate, the Towers, Spell Trap card pop, non-target bounce, Reborn, and then, you know, you'll have a grind game after that. So my whole point with just all of it is I think there's potential in this combo and in this theory for Masterpiece to serve the Golden Lord and be useful in it. Of course, there's inherent strengths and cons to it. Diagram is awkward, but right now, you know, I don't think playing one Masterpiece randomly is just going to do it. You want to at least be able to search it. Once Masterpiece goes to 2, you know, that's different. You know, now you're going to be able to consistently see it more often, and that's important. Diagram plays in the way more and it reveals your hand, but you know, in the theory, in the long run, I think there is stuff here that you can do with the archetype itself and other things, and it's kind of exciting because, you know, it's just another way to play Trap Lich with just now being able to get a really strong oppressive monster on the board that you don't have to sit there and worry, oh, well, how am I going to get stuff there? Because again, you have the versatility of the extra deck at your disposal, and the surprise factor is definitely the strongest point. But right now with Diagram at 1, and you know, you want to see Masterpiece. There's not ever going to really be situations where you don't want to see Masterpiece ever on the board. It's just something to consider. I'm going to be uploading my Duelist Advanced list, but there's a few cards that I want to get, and hopefully I can get those in time. I'm mostly thinking of the future for when we get Justice Hunters and that, because I think Eldlich is actually in a decent spot, at least against K9, and actually can deal with Vanquish Soul. Not well, but it has a few things that it can play that can just completely shut down a deck like that, and it's actually really exciting to see that. And of course, you know, there's so many different ways to build it. You know, if Dryden ever gets unbanned and Barrage moves up, then you can do Zodiac Eldlich with stuff, and you know, you have all that. You have still Odeon, which I cannot afford right now. I'm broke, but you can get Odeon Eldlich. So there's options out there, and Eldlich is not in the worst position. It's just not in the best either. Its age is the problem, but with the new stuff that we have and the cards coming off the list, they definitely give the deck a nice little powerhouse and speed boost, which this deck desperately just needed the most. It's definitely the speed and not any of the other stuff. And again, the strength is being able to just manipulate that Eldlich when you're playing the long game and being able to get that advantage, whether it's link climbing or being able to send cards, being able to manage your resources, being able to get those resources back. It's just the things about that makes, in my opinion, Eldlich the most fun, is being able to use good traps. And on an not related note, I think Eldlich, even though its age is remarkably showing, and you know, it's definitely not the powerhouse it is anymore, especially with so many cards limited, and for good reason. They're unhealthy for the game. One thing that Eldlich seems to have is always be able to get some sort of grind game, which I cannot say a lot of other decks like it can do. Guaranteeing another turn or being able to guarantee, because of the mechanic of being able to set from deck, it actually is insanely hard for decks to interact with that. So Eldlich right now, because it can facilitate that simple little requirement for decks to be able to guarantee to do something after their turn and when it gets affected, the fact that it does technically have that, even if it's not the best, does show that this deck still has some steam left to it and some adaptability to remain, whether that's playing Delta of Invitation as just that, or the spells and traps. You know, you can play White Forest. You can literally just watch, I believe his name is Matt Dog, who just plays Eldlich like no one else's business. So then, you know, that's stuff I really like. And I know this video has gone on for a bit too long, but I, you know, got excited when I was just thinking about, well, can we use Masterpiece to our advantage here? Can we, you know, make it to break Eldlich? Can it push? And honestly, Masterpiece himself deals with quite a few cards in the format, so it's not a horrible option. So please let me know what you think. Obviously this video is probably a bit too long, but I like to go raw and pure, at least for the time being, because I suck at editing. But please let me know what you think. Is this cope, or is there potential for this to be better designed by a better player?